Welcome
back
to the TAE Time podcast. This is our episode 2 in Communicating Europe initiative funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in collaboration with Black and Irish.
Woo!
So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the initial explainer video and now you're here for more. So
yes, on our takes
on our takes our things, like we will be looking, because obviously like when you're talking about stuff this, we obviously want to be, you know, making sure
we want to make sure we say the right
things. So don't be like why are you like, guys,
you're reading it off.
like,
yes,
we're
reading it off.
You know, we don't want to say it. Yeah, exactly. So but obviously like one thing is like obviously we feel like we're pretty good people to kind of discuss stuff like this, just due to the fact that like we're both minorities
in Ireland,
and that have come from a different place. You know, like we immigrated here. We spent a long time. Like my family spent like nearly 21, 22 years here in Ireland.
Damn.
You know, damn. So like we've been here for a long time,
right. And
so we were like we want to talk about kind of like how the European Union can be helping. Obviously, alongside Ireland, can be helping minorities a little bit more, or how they are already doing so, and like maybe some positive improvements that we believe, you know. So take everything with a grain of salt. They're doing a good job, but obviously we can always do more.
Absolutely. And right. I think the reason we like kind of picked this angle is, like you said, because we are minorities in Ireland, obviously. Like we moved to Ireland in 2007 when Romania joined the EU. So I think that alone just kind of shows the impact that EU can have, exactly. Positive impact. And it's had on Ireland too. So yeah, let's just like delve a little bit into more of that.
Yeah, you know, let's get a little bit more. You know, let's get a little bit more.
So the first thing we have here is long-term inclusive strategies. So like the EU has been great at implementing some of these strategies. Like I think you have some examples there of some of these, but I think the issue is more of the longevity of them. Yeah,
exactly. Because like if you guys think about it, like if you have a really good thing that works, right, and everything's always kind of like time based, obviously, because you can't keep a law and you can't keep strategies forever, because obviously the idea is you have to like go back, see the improvements if there are any, strategize, go back and then go back to drawing board and see what needs to be added or what maybe wasn't sorted out the first time, right? So like, you know, here's an example of like they had between 2017 2021 the migrant integration strategy. So Ireland's migrant integration strategy covered areas such as education, employment, health, political participation and combating racism, right? It required all agencies to provide information in multiple languages and increase intercultural programming via the Communities Integration Fund, right? So there was a fund for that. That's sick.
Absolutely.
Right? That's amazing, because the idea is obviously like, you know, people are coming to Ireland, people are speaking lots of different languages, so like it's obviously not so like you know very well of like your parents having documents and then maybe not being able to like
having to translate documents as like a 10-year-old.
Exactly.
Like, I barely speak this language.
And a lot of like us like have that, and things like that is cool, but you see like the time frame there, right?
Yes. Like
different time frames there, really cool, but maybe something like that. Obviously we know like you might have to go back and check, and the fund only lasts X amount, but like having a bigger fund or doing something like that, because then those are things that are really important and makes a massive difference. Like we all know all too much is like children like of immigrant families, like our parents obviously don't have the best like language like necessarily, depending especially like not all of them have great English, you know, comprehension that way, right? Because they speak a different language more time. And so this is one of those things that's like pretty good, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe like a way in which this could be pushed more is by like having more minority participation in these things, because I feel like if there was like a louder voice there from like minorities talking about you know, having more long-term strategies put in place, then it would be heard more, if that makes sense, you know. Like I think we just need more representation.
Absolutely. And like I wanted to touch, there was also an interesting second like strategy that I saw was just like the EU action plan on integration and inclusion. So this is actually still going on all the way to about, I believe, 2027. The wider EU framework guides all member states, including Ireland, to build sustainable long-term strategies focusing on participation, access to services, and anti-discrimination, obviously. So like this is something that over, I think, the course of 6-7 years that they implemented, being like, hey, everybody go and figure these out things to make sure everyone can get it. And that's good, right? Because you give them a time frame to be like, hey, this is the time frame for you to sort out as much as you can. And obviously at the end of it, come and do it. Like things like that, I feel like we really should reduce the time. Once again, we understand government is a long thing. It's not straightforward. And everyone was just like, why can't they just do this? There's like so many layers to it, right?
Layers,
but the thing is, like, I think we should shorten those time frames of like 6-7 years for them to like try to build up all these things to be like, hey, 3 to 5 years, you know, make sure you have a plan in place. Like in 3 to 5 years, you should come with us with a plan, right? Because like obviously, like if you're waiting 6-7-ish years for like your government to like plan these things, get them through, and then start working through them, but then by the time that's when the things start really rolling the ball at the very end, right?
And that's when you start actually noticing it work.
So obviously the sooner the better.
Of course.
The sooner the better. So that's our take. So like obviously, first point, anything that's really good already, extend it.
Of course.
Make sure it can last
and
longer.
Track the outcomes of it too. You know, it's not just like, oh, let's just do this and then forget about it. Like actually hear people out, like see the outcome of what's being implemented.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be like good for implementing the long-term strategies, you know.
Fully agree.
You know what I mean? On to point number 2 that we have here, and it's easier access to support and funding. So actually the EU like provides like funding streams like Erasmus, Horizon, and the European Social Fund, which obviously have opened the doors for many communities. But I think it's just like simplifying the grant applications.
I think Erasmus is obviously a massive one.
Yes.
That's actually a massive point. And it was, while we were doing research, I was seeing that there's like Erasmus Plus. A lot of things have gone in, and it's actually quite amazing to see like, because I know a lot of people who did Erasmus. I'm sure you know a lot of people who did Erasmus. We ourselves actually never did it, but a lot of people did. And I think it's really good, not just in the sense of like, okay, as a young like college student or whatever, you get to go and study in different places. But obviously like Europe is vast. Like there's so many countries, so many cultures, so many things. And like a lot of people, as we know, like come into certain places and then never leave that place. I think it's really good to see diverse voices in other countries, right? And that's Erasmus, really helps that. Like take for example, I'm a kid from Nigeria that grew up in Ireland, right? I'm gonna have such a different view in life, and then if I go to like a different country in the European Union, like they're getting not only my experiences, but I'm also getting their shared experiences, and it's something that we all benefit from.
No, absolutely.
You know,
but you know what? I think because you mentioned about neither of us doing it, I think a reason for it was because I felt like I didn't really understand it. Like I felt like the process was long. Like I wasn't really sure of how to go about it. It just didn't seem like straightforward enough. And I guess this is part of the like simplification of these things and these applications and stuff like that. But I think that kind of scared me off. A little bit.
And I think obviously like especially minorities that move into a country, we also don't have like the money, we don't really have understanding. So it's to make those barriers easier, make them like more straightforward for everyone. And I think it has actually been improved vastly. Like my younger brothers and everything, like it was a lot easier for them and everything like that. So I mean,
we walked so they could run,
they could
right?
run, exactly. So and things like that. And there was even some examples of like asylum, migration, and integration funds, so the AMIF, right? In 2024, I believe, millions in EU funding went to like 17 projects across Ireland. So recipients include lots of different sectors there, and like a lot of Irish refugee councils and regional groups working on multilingual tailored support for migrants and refugees. Like that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like things like that is like funding those kind of projects makes sense, right? Because like those groups will know better what to put money in and how to help the people within their communities. And even on the community thing, there's this whole like community integration fund and national integration fund. So these grant schemes offer funding for local migrant integration projects with focus on dismantling bureaucratic barriers for grassroots organizations. So the idea there is just that, okay, instead of giving the money to the government and then trying to do, like every single little group and try to fit for everyone, it's like, okay, let's go to people who lead these groups or like organizations that support these groups, give them the funding and then let them go from there and be able to help the communities the way they know best, right?
Absolutely.
Because obviously, like, when you have to go through the government, not everyone's going to go. Like, it's so hard to like get time to sit down with every single group and do all that.
So have like a representative.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot easier to have like organizations that deal directly with these different refugees, different migrant groups, and then discuss with them directly.
And they have the knowledge as well, so it's not like you're taking someone who doesn't know anything about it. Another, I guess, thing that they could do is like offer like training and workshops that you could like help Ireland by providing workshops on how to apply for these grants. And like there was like a point that I saw about like writing proposals and managing budgets. Like workshops could include information on that, because it's like I said, even with the Erasmus, sometimes things are not as straightforward and they seem a lot more complicated than they are. So it's hard to know what you have access to, what you don't, what grants could you apply for, stuff like that, and like what funding is accessible to you. So I think something like workshops, even for representatives or something, could be really useful.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, on to our next point. We have education skills and representation. So like we were saying about the Erasmus and like youth initiatives, they have been already empowered. They've empowered many young people from diverse backgrounds to study, train, and work across Europe. So we've already seen a really positive impact of this.
Yeah, I think one thing I found super interesting as I was doing research was like, so there's this ESF Plus fund, right, for skills and lifelong learning. So the European Social Fund Plus has invested hundreds of millions in Ireland to employment and skills, especially for people facing disadvantage, including minorities and migrants. Initiatives include language learning, mentoring, and digital inclusion for children and adults. And that is a massive thing. And it comes back to our first point, right? Mm-hmm. The idea is there's a lot of things we come here and it's like, it's new for everybody, right? Especially depending on like what countries you come from. Kind of like, as we said, us having to be the ones to like translate documents for our parents or having to help them with like, especially right now in this digital age where like, obviously our parents are never going to be the most tech savvy people, and a lot of like documentation is now online, a lot of like digital things. So it's like, okay, help people learn, both the children and the adults, to make sure that they're able to get access to what they need to get access to, right? They're getting learning and training and all those things, and it makes a massive difference, right? Because like, take for example, Susie, right? Like that's something like a lot of people, especially immigrants, use to go to college effectively in Ireland, right? And it's one of those things, it's like you have to do this whole online application now. Like, it's been online. Like when we first started, it was like you could do like, I think it wasn't really too online, but then by the time my brothers were in college, it was fully online. There was the whole thing, right? And like obviously my dad has already gone through it, so he kind of like had an idea, but like I could imagine as like an immigrant dropping to Ireland for the first time, my kids are going to go to college, and it's like, you don't know, like you're tough on cash, but you have no idea about all these different things that exist and like how to apply for them properly, how to deal with them properly. And I think that makes a massive difference, right? Like to be able to, it's like, oh, I don't have to ask someone. You can go to official sources. They can help train you, help educate you. And I think that's just fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. And I think on the education side as well, even just with the leaving cert, like being able to say, do an exam in Romanian. I think that was like really cool. Okay, because now I didn't do it.
Look at her not taking advantage of all these things.
I didn't do it personally. But the fact that it was accessible, or we had so many students from so many other countries, like, you had Polish, Russian, all these different languages that you're actually able to do in the Leaving Cert. That was really important for us kids coming here and having that like familiarity, having something that we are able to do also, which was really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And funny that you bring that up because I actually have, it's like it's like she kind of knows, even though she actually doesn't know. There was a traveler and Roma higher education support. So in recent years, Ireland allocated an additional X amount of money with European support to programs helping traveler and Roma students access and succeed in higher education. Resources included mentoring, bursaries, sorry, I'm terrible at English, digital tools, and mental health support.
Okay.
Like, that's a massive thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, you know, these are two minority groups that are not always treated the best and everything like that. And it's amazing that they're able to put money towards funding and supporting these communities, right? Because, like, as I said, everything's digital age now. It makes a massive difference. And obviously, like, these are people that maybe are not getting the best situations. And so now you're actually be able to support them to make sure they can get higher education and get all these things. And like, what do you think about that? Especially like coming from the Romanian community and also knowing like Roma people around you and so on and so forth. Like, I think that's obviously like...
You know what? I think Ireland is really, really good at integrating their own people in their lives. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically I feel like this is a little bit unrelated, but like in Romania we were literally talking about this, how the Roma community is really kind of like pushed to the side and almost like not considered Romanian. But I feel like everyone that's coming to Ireland and growing up in Ireland is instantly taking this like role of like, I'm an Irish person, you know, and Ireland accepts that. So I feel like I really liked being able to move there and being able to identify as part of the culture, coming from somewhere where it's very, very different. So I think it's really positive, and I think if that just continues to grow and constantly kind of like push for this kind of gelling of communities and funding them, that'd be great, especially hearing their voice too, because like you said, I feel like sometimes they're a little bit undermined. I think another thing here is that a point that I noted was like having promoting inclusive cultural education. And you may remember like cultural days growing up.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
They were, I don't know, for some reason I got loads of anxiety when it came when it came around to them. I think it's just because, you know, you are responsible of representing your culture, and that was like really scary for me. But learning about everyone else's culture was so cool, like trying different foods, seeing different outfits. Like that was really a lot more impactful for me growing up than like I thought it was at the time. And I think growing up, having experienced that, I was like, wow, like that should continue. And like I wish we saw it more in like secondary schools and you know, stuff like that. I feel like it's just not, after primary school, it just kind of fizzles out a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it's one of those things that I think, like, obviously I'm not too sure how they do it in other countries, but Ireland is really great for that. Like, you know, like even in our school, you know, I went to Truly Educate together, and like it's an
love that one.
Yeah. So and like we did a lot of cultural days, throughout the year, and it was great because like you just see so many people's cultures, you see everything, and we're also getting educated at the same time, right? You know, like we're literally learning about other people's cultures, and then it's like, so like when you're older, like someone talks about something, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that because I learned it in school, you know, based off this. And it's like, they're like, oh really, that's cool, you know, like, and I feel like Irish people are very well versed in that because we all are like used to like, oh yeah, I learned that in school.
Exactly.
And you know, and that's the whole idea about like the whole education. It's like, it's from a young age, we're able to like further these kids, you know, to make sure that not only are they included, but they are also like, you know, brought on. And then it comes back to the whole thing of like adults as well, right? The idea of adults can come into this country and they can go and get education, like more than wherever they got it, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you want to go into, you've moved to Ireland now, maybe you're doing something else, and now you want to do like more of a high skill job, and now there are funding and there are things there in place to make sure to give you your best chance to be able to go and pursue those things that you want to do. And I think it's amazing.
Oh no, absolutely.
Know? Like absolutely. Sure, isn't like your mom, for example, she's going to like computer classes,
yes,
right?
Yes,
you know,
and English
classes,
and at her age, you know, and there's so many people
exactly
that can take advantage of it, which is amazing. Like I feel like Ireland is genuinely good at helping people. Like if you want help, it's there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, to help integrate in the culture, in learning the language, and like you said, like becoming more tech savvy. Do you know what I mean? Like, because like our parents, like you said, they're not the most.
Yeah, exactly. So
well
things like
versed
this,
in this.
like all like her doing that, like these are all funded by, you know, Ireland, and then inversely the European Union, and so forth, and everything supporting each other. And like these things wouldn't be impossible. Like, and literally these things give you an advantage, right? Like we know if you are more tech savvy, if you're more well versed in English, you have an advantage, right?
Yep.
So it's to make sure it's kind of like to even the playing field out a little bit more, you know. And then that kind of leads into our fourth point about fighting racism and promoting belonging.
Yes,
that's obviously a big thing that obviously the European Union and Ireland try to push all the time, right? They want it to be inclusive, you know. Like we obviously know, we know there's a lot of things like right-wing, whatever, but at the end of the day, like Europe is a very diverse place. Even forget about like minorities like us, like, well, like me from outside of Europe, right? Because you're within Europe, but Europe is already massively diverse, right?
Yes.
So like obviously it's massively diverse, and then you have even more people from other places outside of Europe coming in, and we really need to like be very focused in on fighting racism, and
yes,
that's a massive thing. Like, and one of the things was like sorry guys, National Action Plan Against Racism, NAPAR, you know. So it launched in March 2023. NAPAR is Ireland's coordinated government plan built through EU and independent constellation to address racism and increase participation for minorities, support hate crime victims, and collect data to measure progress. This is huge, like, right? And the idea is we want to make sure that, hey, we know racism is a thing. We know people are excluded, and the idea is, how do we fight against this? How do we talk to the groups involved to make sure that this is a big thing? And obviously, as you said, you know, the Roma community, for example, in Romania might not be treated the same way, and they're here in Ireland, and you don't want them to be treated terribly.
of course.
Me as an African, as a black person, obviously there's racism I will face, and obviously it's like, how do we reduce that? How to make sure that that doesn't affect this person's life? And it's a massive thing.
Absolutely. And I think you know, Ireland is actually quite good at being vocal to, you know, all groups are vocal, and all groups have given a right to say whatever they want us to chant on the streets, which is amazing. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like if some things that I try to envision it in Romania, people will be like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? But I like that. People are just like free to protest whatever. And I love seeing like all the, if you remember back during COVID-ish times, there was like some, you know, when with the George Floyd thing happened, and there was some protests happening in Ireland. I thought that was so great. Like, people were out on the streets, and I think we can really strengthen the reinforcements there of like, you know, bringing awareness to it all, and having people like speak up, and having the right representation and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Promoting public awareness campaigns. You know, actually, I remember seeing this ad on the train, and it was like this like hijabi girl, and it was like, oh, we don't promote discrimination or something like that. And I don't know, it just made me happy like seeing it, because it's like actually taken serious enough that there's an ad on the train about this. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, it's not being swept under the rug, and I feel like more of that like is what's needed.
Yeah, definitely pushing forward for all those kind of things, because like we can't lie, like racism exists, right? Both in Ireland, both in Europe, right? And the idea is like, they're aware this is a problem, and it's like, how do we solve this problem? Let's work with the groups involved, let's work with everybody, fund this thing, and make sure to try push in a progressive way, right? Because the idea is like, Europe is definitely more diverse, more multinational now, so it really needs to make sure that everybody is being treated fairly and being treated correctly, and things like this further, because like, it's one thing to acknowledge something, and it's one thing to like try to fight against
what are
it,
you gonna do,
right? Like, because they're putting their money where their mouth is, right? It's like trying to push against these things, because you can't just be like, oh, this is terrible, that's all. It's like, okay, let's actually go and figure a plan, and let's go do this. And as you said, like, different promotions, different ways of trying to fight and combat like racism in all forms, you know, and to promote belonging. That's truly what's required. Like,
absolutely.
You know.
And I think like it can promote more like community healing, you know. I guess like having events in Tralee, Tralee's really good for this actually. Like there are events where like, you know, people share their different artworks or art forms or foods with stalls and stuff. And I know one of my mom's friends, she's Indonesian, and every time she would like put on like a little show or something like that. And I think we need more of that. Like exposure to different cultures is so important.
Yeah.
You know, rather than like, I think it's just easy to be stuck in your bubble. But if you like see it out in public, it's like, oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to go out of your way to look for it. If you're like going about your day and you're like seeing it, I think that'd be really good.
It makes a massive difference. Exposure is a big difference.
Exposure therapy.
You know, exposure therapy, yeah, essentially, like, because it really goes from like, it's not an us versus them, it's just an us, right?
Yeah.
You know, and that's the idea, right? And obviously, like, you know, like times are tough, like there's a lot of things going on, but the idea is like, okay, despite our differences, regardless of us, it's all of us together, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like let's be honest, like for especially like people like my brothers, like Ireland's all they know. Like they don't know anything more. Like, you know, you couldn't drop like my youngest brother in Nigeria and then be like, oh yeah, you're a Nigerian, you're African, go figure it out. You know, he's Irish. Like he has a strong Kerry accent. You know, the whole thing. It's a big.
And born and raised,
you know,
in
born
Ireland.
and raised. Like, you know, he's a Kerry man. Like for all intents and purposes. So like, you know, like that's all they know. So like, you can't be making someone who knows nothing else but this country feel othered in the country.
Of course.
And that's why it's great that all these things exist, to like make sure that is reduced and to raise public awareness about this. And because like the best form to stop racism is education. Like you need to educate everybody, being like, hey,
and we can do more. Like
exactly.
There could be more done in that aspect.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
We can educate the public more. We can, well, like if someone else says I'll do it, and that's the problem, you know. I'm waiting for someone else to like do something. But like just regarding like the EU implementation of stuff and helping Ireland out, it's definitely something that should be highlighted more. On to the final point. Yeah,
and it actually kind of fun leads. Like there's community voice and data that reflect reality, right? And one thing actually is there's traveler and Roman policy development, right? The European Commission has called for Greece and Ireland to create policy frameworks based on better data and direct consultation with traveler and Roman communities, promoting representation and accountability in policymaking. That's massive, right? As we already said, we know in Ireland ourselves, like the traveler group, the Roman group, and so on and so forth are also kind of like, you know, push it a little bit to the side. And so trying to make sure that their voices are actually heard is a big thing. And it's kind of like also like, you know, the same thing of like, you know, Black people as well, trying to make sure that we are brought to the table and we're there as well in the forefront, and making sure that all voices, like minorities, you know, are fully heard. And I think making sure that everyone has a seat at the table when it comes to like policy making and decision making that affects all of us is a massive thing, right?
Yeah.
Representation matters. That's one thing absolutely that we know, like representation matters. And especially the best way to do it is data. Anything that you can track, you know, you can like show proof and do it. It's like, okay, yeah. It's like in this council seat, we only have X amount of like minorities from like, you know, African or so on and so forth backgrounds. And it's like, why is it so low? You know, especially like we should increase that should be increased. And it's not like a quota thing. It's like obviously you're getting the right people who are doing these things,
and it's making the data more accurate.
Exactly. So, and then when it comes to like making policies, like you have the diverse voices in the room to be able to be like, hey, yeah, maybe this isn't as good as we think it is, and it's not going to impact these people the right way. And they're like, oh, how so? And then you have discussion points with people who are there, who understand these communities a lot better, you know, and can be the voice for people, for the Black people in Ireland, for the Roman people, the travelers, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think you need that representation because, you know, you can't just have a bunch of people making policies for other people and then knowing nothing of them, of their struggles, of their experience. And that's why it's important to have like this representation from different groups. I saw another point about amplifying minority media and storytelling. So like the EU could support local platforms like podcasts, us,
Yeah.
publications, community informed. Sorry, where was I? Sorry, yeah, that authentically represent diverse voices. So,
Yeah.
you know, this is
Literally,
an initiative.
Literally this initiative, and it's a good way to like kind of like have a closing point. It's like initiatives like this where you hear from the Black and Irish, the Roma Irish, whatever you want to call it, you know, the Romanian Irish, everyone like from different points, different experiences makes a difference, right? Because the idea is like as much as like right wing would want to push and be like, oh no, we don't want you there. This is the face of Europe. Like Europe is ever changing, it's ever diverse, you know, and it has so many people, right? Especially like in Ireland. Ireland is so diverse now. Like you go into Dublin any day of the week and it's ridiculously.
You're hearing so many languages.
So many languages, so many different skin colors, so many different everything, right? And so things like this push forward that narrative. Hey, we're all in this together. We are all Irish. Like, you know, like for example, I saw there on the platform recently that's like, hey, like of people who were getting nationalization, you know, like their Irish passports, and they were all gas, like people who have been waiting lots of years from different backgrounds, lots of Africans especially, you know, like who are finally becoming Irish citizens. It means a lot to these people. Like a lot of these people truly see Ireland and Europe as their home. Like this is their place now, you know, and it means a lot to them. Like you hear from anybody, like even my dad, who's proudly Nigerian, he's still like very like proud to be from Ireland, and like, you know, wears Ireland with pride. Things like this, and you can't, that's why you need to show that side. You need to show that, hey, these are people who are very well integrated, very happy to call themselves like Irish, you know, and I'm really happy that, you know, even Black and Irish gave us the platform to be able to portray like even more. I was like, hey, Ireland and Europe are working together to make sure that we have more voices, we have more chances, and we have a leg up, right? Because the idea is like, you don't want people coming in and just being stuck at the bottom. You want everybody to raise together, because it helps your entire society
as a collective, as the
economy, as everything, right? Like it's been shown multiple times that diverse workforces are economically good, like because you have lots of different thoughts, lots of different processes, everything like that, and especially because Ireland is more diverse, you need to reflect that, and it's amazing that.
Absolutely, and don't just believe all the rage bait you see online, because rage bait does really well, and there's so much there's a negative agenda against like the EU, against like, you know, diversity and stuff like that, but that's not the reality, you know. So I'm glad that we were able to kind of like have this episode, like you said, highlight some of the positives and, you know, what can be done better going forward. So yeah, we believe in a very united
going forward,
Ireland, a united EU. So,
and hopefully you guys have been better educated from the 2 episodes, and as well, you know, to make sure that you're voting, you're doing all these things, and making sure that you also have a voice and
get involved
and show an impact, you know, within everything related, and try to do your best.
Absolutely, because you have more impact than you think you do.
Exactly.
So hope you guys enjoyed today's episode,
and we'll see you guys again next time. Peace.